The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Wednesday in the Riv.
After a city council meeting.
After an absolute disgrace of a council meeting that just ran roughshod over every residential taxpayer in the city of Fall River. Again, they show their lack of preparation, their inability to grasp anything they vote on. Not one person, but let's segue into that later. But let's begin with this disturbing thing that's not surprising to me. Massachusetts tops nation in new index of economic insecurity for elders living alone. That doesn't surprise me.
Doesn't surprise me either.
What do you think the number one city for insecurity for elders is?
Probably Fall River.
The same city that's number one in crime.
Fall River.
Fall River. Welcome, and our council doesn't realize the city they're living in. Because last night, we're living in Newton. Everybody here makes six figures. 76% of the people here have bachelor's degrees, like they do in Newton. So they don't care, just dump it on the residential taxpayer. You know what this calls for? Drastic measures for the taxpayer. This is you last night, taxpayer. And that's what the city council did to you last night. Stomped your guts out. While they allow, if CJ or I go up there or anybody else goes up there to try to set the record straight and all the lies that are perpetrated by these business owners who don't care about they whine about their tax factor. Oh, we can't do it. Businesses are not going to come to Fall River. Well, have you ever driven up Pleasant Street, City Council, and looked at the empty storefronts? Have you ever driven up South Main Street and see the derelict storefronts? Nobody comes to Fall River anymore. You know when they came to Fall River? When everybody had a crappy job, but they had a job and they had discretionary income in their pocket because they worked in the mills. And every single storefront on Pleasant Street had a store in it, and they were thriving. South Main Street was thriving. Your tax factor doesn't bring businesses in. What brings businesses in, especially small business, are citizens that have discretionary income to spend in their businesses. And Fall River has none. Have you forgotten that the average household income and individual income in Fall River is less than half the state average? We are the poorest city in the state. We are the most crime-ridden city in the state. You think lining your pockets by shifting the tax burden to the residential taxpayer is the right thing to do? Of course you do. Because if you could move your factory to Bangladesh and get them to work for 2 cents a day, you would. But you go up there and you manufacture statistics. Like, oh, no, nobody's got a 175 tax rate. Hetzler was lying his butt off. And did one city councilor correct them? Did any city councilor know when they're gonna vote on a tax factor for the people that they represent? And you know that the Chamber of Horrors, I mean the Chamber of Commerce, the same Chamber of Commerce group that said Fall River was a low-crime city with a picturesque waterfront. I don't know what kind of drugs they were on when they wrote that, but they did, and we read it on the show.
Well, remember,
the Chamber of Commerce is a marketing tool for the businesses. They do not belong in front of the city council, and I told this to the president, well, acting mayor now, the president of the city council, in a conversation last night when I called him, because I was livid. They are there pushing an agenda for the businesses. The only time someone who isn't a taxpayer in Fall River should be allowed to speak at citizens' input is when they are directly related to something that's being discussed, an issue, not the tax factor, because those people are hired guns. They have no dog in this fight. Their only dog is to shift the burden to you, the taxpayer. And Hetzler actually said, well, you know, we don't get TIFs. Well, that's the only way we do get businesses in Fall River. They get a TIF, they don't pay property taxes, it gets put in your taxes because it increases the tax base, or ties, or TIFs, or whatever you want to call them, because getting screwed by any other name is still getting screwed, but you, the residential taxpayer, is getting screwed again. Then he says, well, we can't do it with that. Nobody will come. Nobody comes anyway. Show me the businesses, small businesses that have come to this city, and how many have come and stayed in business. I want to see the stats. I know the stats in Newton. They have 2,000 less people than we do and 10,000 more businesses and a 175 tax rate. And why do they have that? And why are all the businesses clamoring to get into Newton? Because the average household income is over $100,000, not $34,000 like Fall River. They have people that spend money. Tax factors are not an issue when you have people living in a community that have discretionary income. But our city council, the people elected to protect you and serve you, continuously shift the burden to you, continuously approve TIFs. And now they're even approving personal TIFs.
I want one of those.
Because at a board meeting
Yesterday.
the only vote was Cliff Ponte against it, but the two of the outgoing councilors, the Camara brothers, no relation to me.
No, Camara and Long. But Long was for it.
No, Steve voted for it. Steve and Joe.
I didn't know Steve was there because I didn't see him.
Steve was there. Steve, Joe, and Long, all three of them on their way out. And by the way, Steve Long retired today.
Oh, he did?
Put in for his retirement. I approved it at the board meeting today, a superannuation retirement. So that's a little caveat that we'll stick in that nobody else knows yet because the meeting just ended. But he has retired officially.
Now, does that mean he has to leave the city council? Because he gets paid from the city council.
Well,
Or is he covered under that elected
I
thing?
would have to look at the date of his retirement because he can put in his papers. He may not be retired till his term is over.
Yeah.
I don't think he's dumb enough. It would be like 1 month's salary or something like that. But you know, it infuriates me to watch them, to think that they think everybody in this community is stupid. And Sean Kadim said, well, this is fair. Well, let me tell you something, millennial boy. You and your six-figured salary, you've had six-figured salaries most of your adult life. Who are you representing in that city council? Yourself? It's fair? It's not fair.
And he's not even a property owner.
It's not. Didn't he go bankrupt a while back?
Yes, he did.
Didn't he have Okay, so with a six-figure salary. But he's representing a community where the average income, personal income, is $22,000 a year. And that's a federal statistic. That's not my statistic. He is representing people in the poorest city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then when they get up in front of the council and manipulate facts and numbers, and the council is not prepared to refute it for your own good, they all should be gone. They just got reelected, so they don't care again. They're going to screw you. So I'm going to make it my mission to boot them all out in the next election in 2 years. Let's try to get some candidates that will remember who the hell they represent in this community. They represent people who are scratching to make rent, scratching to buy food. And you think it's okay, and then they say, well, our tax rate is comparable. No, it isn't. Because your tax rate, you don't compare your tax rate with Newton's tax rate. That's not an accurate, let's look at the whole forest, not the tree, because that's what people do, because figures don't lie, but liars can figure. Let's look at the whole dynamic. If you got $2 in your pocket and there's an $8 hamburger staring you in the face, guess what? You can't buy that hamburger. And that hamburger is way overpriced. But if you live in Newton and you got about $400 or $500 in your wallet, that $8 hamburger is chump change. Do you really think that the tax rate is insignificant to the people of Fall River when the average household income is $34,000? Do you truly believe that? If you do, you shouldn't be sitting in the council. Every single councilor was unprepared, didn't check. This is the most important thing they vote on every year. Taxes. This city flourished when tax increases were not the norm, when mayors and city councilors were afraid to raise the taxes and kept money in people's pockets. And South Main Street and Pleasant Street were flourishing because that's what drives an economy. That's what drives an economy. People with money. The reason that the Depression ended was the Second World War ended and all those people couldn't spend their money during the war because they were either serving their country or working in war industry, and everything was rationed. You couldn't buy a car, you couldn't buy a refrigerator, gas was rationed, sugar was rationed. They had nowhere to spend their money. And how did we extricate ourselves from the Great Depression? We gave people money to spend, and businesses flourished. That's why since the Second World War, every war has resulted in a recession. Because the recessions are created because after the Second World War, there were no rationing, and the GP and the gross national product continued to be produced. We kept producing consumer goods when everybody was working, and that inflates prices, so you created inflation. But these people don't know the most fundamental piece of economics, or they don't care. And as far as I'm concerned, last night proved to me that not one of them is worthy of occupying a seat in there and being my representative. So I'm really happy with the way I cast my ballot. So that's my rant, because I'm telling you, I am absolutely, that was the most disgraceful and despicable display, and they even classified it as a hearing, so Hetzler and the other guy from the Chamber of Commerce could have 15 minutes. But if you and I go there, we get 2 minutes and 59 seconds, and we're gavelled out. And they don't pay attention to you anyway, because you can send them a letter, you can send them the stats. I've appeared before that council, I don't know how many times, ad nauseum. Read them the stats, read them the average incomes of all the cities of our size. I still have all that stuff in my briefcase. Do they listen? No. Do they care? No. Because they all got good jobs. Maybe that's why most of our council always comes from the North End, which is the most affluent area of the city. Shame on you, council. You are not representing the people of Fall River, because you have no idea what the average person in Fall River is facing. And it was obvious last night. Okay, your turn. I'm done with my rant.
No question about that. And, you know, as you mentioned, Mr. Hetzler and the chairman or president of the Chamber of Commerce sat there, and they were there for at least 10, 15 minutes. And we don't get that amount of time.
And whining the whole time.
And whining. And the thing that was the real icing on the cake was turning around saying, oh, well, we're hoping that this tax factor drops down to the bare minimum. They want it to be at 1, where the taxes are equal on both sides. Okay? That's what they want.
Yeah.
Or better yet, they want it to be less than 1, so that they get a lower tax rate at all. And presidential taxpayers paying for it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I tell them what. Let them, next time they want to come forward, I want them to come forward with their household tax return. They're demanding Trump's tax returns. I'm demanding their tax returns. I want to see how much money Hetzler made and his business made last year. And he wants another break. Just like the businesses that took their goods out of the country to manufacture so they could make them cheaper and make a higher profit, and then began to whine about the tariffs to bring their goods back into the country. Well, if you didn't leave the country, you wouldn't have had a tariff, would you? No. But nobody gives a damn, because all politicians care about, and as Milton Friedman said, I'm going to say it again, and I say it all the time because he was right. The man was an economic genius. If you give the government the Sahara Desert, they'll run out of sand in 5 years.
Yes, they will.
Because the only thing they know how to do is spend money. All they know how to do is, here it comes again. Pound you into sand. Pound you into sand. Also, we have one of the highest retiree populations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, all of whom are on a fixed income.
But we're making more market rate housing that they can't afford.
That they can't afford, exactly. And I can speak with 100% accuracy, because I'm on the retirement board, that 60% of the Fall River municipal retirees have a pension of less than $25,000. So do you seriously think you were representing them by giving business a break? Business. With Hetzler whining, oh, I don't get a TIF. Well, no, you don't get a TIF, but somebody just got in. Maybe you can get one now, because Steve and Joe and the other Steve that are all leaving now, they made sure, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to stop? That's a personal business. And they want a TIF for a business that's moving into a building that's already getting a TIF.
And that's why the TIF they got is a personal property exemption.
Personally property exemption, that's right. So let's give the personal, so who decides on whose personal property gets an exemption? Politicians. So you know something, there's not enough, I'll knock the sunflower right off that thing if I hit it as hard as I want to, because that's what they're doing to you. This is deplorable. In all the years I've been dealing with city councils, and I dealt with them when the city was in pretty good shape, I have never seen a more inept, unprepared city council in my life. The tax factor, those people should have had every tax factor for every city of our size. They should have had a proportionate and ratio tax value based on a per capita income. All the numbers that I went through the trouble of getting and presenting to them, I don't know, how many times? 20, 15, 20 times over the last 5 or 6 years? How many times have I been in front of that council reading Newton's average income, average educational level, household income, number of businesses, and all the stats that they should have had? And you call yourself a city councilor, you show up 5 minutes before the meeting and give the rich people everything they want so you can curry favor with the rich and powerful at the expense of the majority of people in Fall River. But
the sad part about it is,
the sad part about it is these poor people that are getting trampled on don't go out and vote.
Right, and the sad part about it is you have people sitting on this council that may not own property, and they're making a decision there.
That's right.
And they don't care. And as I said to our viewers and people on Facebook and elsewhere, you should demand the city council give us a 1.75 and let it go from there. Now, Kyle Hetzler was also complaining because I have the highest rainwater tax. I got to pay that. And that's a lot of money.
But he's buddies with Terry Sullivan. Why is he going to have Terry pay part of it since he didn't get the paperwork in on time? We would have had some relief. But look, all they do is complain. All they do is complain. But let's go back to what I said earlier. Let's look at the reality. If tax factors mattered, when Pleasant Street was full and South Main Street was full, And we had businesses, small businesses, not big businesses that come in and get TIFs and don't hire many Fall River employees, but I'm talking about real businesses, small business, which is the backbone of a city like Fall River's economy. When was this city really moving? 8 restaurants between Stafford Square and Bogle Hill, a couple of clothing stores, numerous 2 or 3 or 4 clothing stores, women's shops, all kinds of shops, 5 and 10s, everything. When people were working. If you look at the businesses, see, they don't look at stats. I do. If you look at the amount of businesses in all the poverty-ridden cities, if you look at the Lowells and the Lawrences and the Fall Rivers, and you look at the amount of, and don't look at the Chamber of Commerce. Don't listen to anything they say, because remember, they said there's no crime in Fall River and we have a picturesque waterfront. So they're full of crap. But the fact is, go on the federal website. Go to the United States Census Bureau. That's where I go. Go to the U.S. Census Bureau, look up the city. It'll give you a breakdown of all the things. They'll give you the ethnic breakdown. They give you the per capita income. They give you the individual income. They give you the amount of people with college degrees. They give you the amount of people, homeowners, multiple family owned. They give you all kinds. They'll bury you with statistics. But if you're a councilor voting on a tax increase for the poorest people in the state that live in your city, don't you think you would have some ammunition to refute what the Chamber of Commerce and Hetzler said? No, because you're stooges for them. You've proven that time and time again. Because you used to let the other guy, what's his name? I already forgot. I've got you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, Ron Mellion.
Rob Mellion.
Rob Mellion.
The Messiah. The guy that used to walk across from Somerset, walk across the Taunton River on the water. He could get 20 minutes, an hour. And he'd give you all kinds of BS statistics, like Fall River's a low crime area, and tell you that if they pay less, we get more. You know what that is? That is their convoluted version of trickle-down economics. And you know the only thing that trickles down is manure. Because trickle-down economics doesn't work. Because companies and businesses want to make as much money as they can, and they don't trickle it down to their employees, because if that was true, when the mills were making a lot of money, they wouldn't have moved to North Carolina, but the unions were making them pay too much to their workers, so they moved to North Carolina. Then North Carolina got too expensive, and now they're all in Bangladesh and Vietnam and places where they can get people to work for 2 cents an hour. There was just a documentary on TV, one of the nightly news is showing these children, these poor, it was horrifying, working in a hole for 14 hours a day for pennies. And they showed them chipping mica for all these multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that use mica. And they live on 1 bowl of rice a day. Do you really believe business has your best interest at heart? Do you really believe with what we've seen over the past 20 years of businesses running any way they can to pay people less and give them less benefits, that cutting their tax rate is going to help? They're going to pass that on to you. If you do, you need serious psychological attention.
Well, I just love our picturesque waterfront with a great view of a scrap recycling facility.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Beautiful waterfront, low crime.
Salt mounds. You know, lots of salt mounds we can get to see.
But you know, it was that meeting was a disgrace, and I know you were watching it because you were calling me and telling me how many pins you stuck in your eyes. So,
you know, the worst part about all of this is that, you know, the business portion of this had no problem saying we want it to be the lowest possible tax factor. which means that it's the highest possible tax factor for the residential taxpayer.
Yeah, but they never finished. They never finished that sentence like you did.
Right. And one of the city councilors said, I believe it was Steve Camara, said, well, we've got to, balance this so that the people who are hurting the most to pay their taxes can afford to pay their taxes. It was something along that line. And again, Sean Kadim said, oh no, you got to have at least a 1.71. 1.71 will be good. And he made the motion for 1.71. He goes, because that will be fair. Meanwhile, we were at 1.72. So that not only are your property taxes going to go up because they revalued your house. They revalued your house this year. Did you know that? So that means higher tax rate there. But the tax factor is going to send it that much higher. Thank you, City Council, for that. We tell you all the time, pay attention and remember what they do. So when you go to the ballot box, you can say no. But instead, you vote for your friends. You voted for a chow mein sandwich again. Come on.
Yeah, and forgive me if I don't think that Steve Camara's motivation was altruistic. He owns a lot of property.
Exactly.
So he doesn't want his residential rates going up. So he did it. He said the right thing for the wrong reason. But the fact is, as I said, Sean Kadim, that was just total. It shows how out of touch he is with reality. Because he's got a nice job, always had a nice job, and even he had economic difficulties. But he doesn't care. He doesn't know the city he lives in. He's walking around with Bruno Mali shoes, too. He doesn't care. They don't care about the average person. They don't even have a comprehension about that. That's what the average is. Remember, $34,000 is the average household income. I saw a stat, and I think I brought it before the council once, that we have a very high percentage of this city living on less than $24,000 a year for a household income. That's mind-boggling. Do you really believe that retirees on fixed incomes can continue to absorb this? And don't tell me that the rate is lower rate is lower than here, lower than there. It's not, because it's got to be, if you want to get an accurate representation of the impact of a tax rate, you have to correlate it to the ability to pay of the people who are being taxed.
Well, the interesting thing about that factor is that they presented that the city assessor, who I know him very well.
The acting city assessor. No, that's the assistant, because isn't the...
No, isn't
the assessor on...
He's on administrative leave.
Administrative leave.
Yeah. So he must be the vice or whatever.
Assistant assessor.
Yeah, whatever it may be. But he said that, Fall River's tax rate is still the lowest tax rate in the state. And if property values here are lower than anywhere else in the state. And he says we're lower than New Bedford.
So that makes it okay to overcharge people. That's what I said. Look, that's another bullshit, line of bullshit to justify what they're doing. It's not the lowest tax rate.
Well, they said
because if you got $2 in your pocket, you can't pay your damn taxes. It's too high.
That's right.
They want people to come to Fall River and stay in Fall. You know what they're contributing to? Homelessness. Because they're going to continue to drive the taxes up, and the people who own houses are going to lose them and be on the street, and the people who live in apartments are going to get their rent raised to the point they can't afford it. Then they're going to get evicted, and we're going to create more homelessness, and they don't give a damn. I don't want to hear that crap. That is the biggest pack up. We got the lowest tax rate. We don't. We don't. Well, it has to be how it compares to the people's ability to pay. What's the first thing a union has to prove when they take a city to court for a collective bargaining agreement? The city's ability to pay. How about the city council and the Chamber of Commerce proving to me the citizens of Fall River's ability to pay the taxes?
I'd like to know that too. And by the way, they said that our commercial tax rate is the highest in the state. So we're the lowest and the highest. So I don't know.
Horse shit.
Hey, everybody, stay angry. We'll see you on Friday.
Oh, there goes I told you, it went to